Hello, everyone. Sorry to be a minute or two late. I just got some rather interesting news about my, well, I shouldn't say favorite, but about a nonprofit, in theory, the Foundation for Against Intolerance and Racism, otherwise known as FAIR, which we're not going to talk about today. But you know, if you guys have been following my Substack lately, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to FAIR. If you have not been following my Substack lately, you should totally start. It's carlin.substack.com. But we're not going to talk about that right now because we have a different order of business to attend to, and that is that it's Friday. We made it through another week, and that means that it is time for Happy Hour. Now, Happy Hour, if you haven't been with us before, is just a fun show that I do every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm broadcasting on my main YouTube channel, on my second YouTube channel, Actively Unwoke. If you're not yet subscribed to Actively Unwoke, I did put the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to that too. It comes in handy every time I get a nonsense BS strike on YouTube. And of course, like I am actually going to be moving Happy Hour over to Actively Unwoke probably in a couple months. But right now I'm doing it on both. I'm also streaming on my Facebook page, on my Odyssey account, and on my Rockfin account. So we're going to be in all sorts of places. Justin says the only nonprofit I care about is the Save the Quill Fund. Justin, we should talk at some point, my friend. We should talk. I went to the Quill a couple weeks ago, and it was much less manly and dirty than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be dirty, but like the only pictures I had seen of the Quill were the bar with the guys hanging out. So I was like, this is all that it is. But we should talk. I've now seen it, and I'm much more in favor of it. And I actually had a really good time there. All right, let's see. So in Happy Hour, what we do is we watch a training of some sort, a woke training, and I drink and we talk about it because it's Friday. And sometimes you just need a little extra help to get through the stream. Now, for our stream today, how many of you saw the stream I did yesterday about social emotional learning? How many people saw that stream? That stream was crazy, right? Well, I just wasn't done with social emotional learning yet. And so I found us a social emotional learning presentation to watch for today. And even better for everyone who saw the stream I did yesterday, this stream is actually sponsored by one of the organizations we talked about yesterday. And we looked at some of their forums yesterday, and that is Castle. So you see it right down here, hosted by Castle. Castle is a Bill Gates funded organization that is one of the two primary sponsors of social emotional learning in the country. They're in a lot of schools. They might be in your school. You don't know. And you know what particularly caught my eye about this particular webinar, and it was just given less than a month ago, the future of civic engagement is social emotional learning. Now, why would something that is simply designed to, according to them, according to help students, build better relationships and have a better mental attitude and get along well with others, why would something like that contribute to civic engagement? Maybe another way to say civic engagement is to say being an activist. Can we say that? Why would social emotional learning contribute to the future of civic engagement / possibly activism of some sort? We're going to find out as we watch the presentation today. Nick H said, got J&J vax, now I'm sick and effing and effing drink today, F my FML. You know, I was thinking about getting the J&J vaccine, and now like I'm not so sure because the FDA has has endorsed like a booster shot for it, or can't drink. Nick says can't drink. I mean, you can't drink after you get the J. Wait, what is the deal? Why can't you drink after you get the J&J vaccine? Just because you're sick, or is it an actual thing? I'm gonna have to suss that out. Not that I drink all that. I really only drink during happy hour. But that's interesting. All right. So this is what we're gonna watch today. Now, there's a couple other orders of business. I don't actually think usually on Fridays we play Unwoke Bingo. And you guys are welcome to download Unwoke Bingo. The bingo card should be in the description for the feed. I don't think today is going to be like the best day for Unwoke Bingo because I don't really. This is a different kind of talk, but of course you are welcome to download the bingo card and play if you like. But the best thing you can do if you want to help me out is to become a member of my locals community. Locals is the best place on the internet. I get strikes every now and again on YouTube for doing things like being a psychologist, reading a peer-reviewed psychology article about the psychological impact of wearing masks, and YouTube doesn't like that very much. So sometimes they like to give my channel a strike. Now, the reason that locals is so important is because it is always a place where we will never be censored. We can talk about whatever we want, and to be honest, the community is just really great. You also help support the work I do when you become a member. You can join for free, kb.locals.com. You can absolutely join for free and sign up. But if you want to unlock all of the features of Locals, you're going to want to become a member at $5 a month or $50 a year, or you can make a one-time gift. Now, we do tomorrow in Locals have God, I keep forgetting to actually post this in Locals. So for all my Locals members here, we do actually have an activity tomorrow. We are going to do a craft and bitch around 3 p.m., which is just a time where we can come and do crafts and chit chat. We're going to do it over Zoom. I'm going to have actually, hang on. I'm going to show you guys this. I'm going to have my Westnitz Yarn Along mystery yarn along project that I'm working on. Which, like, the mystery yarn along for knitters, this is like the happiest time of year is the Westnitz mystery yarn along. Yeah, Adrian, I'm gonna post bitchcraft. I promise. I'll post it while we're streaming. But this is what I'm working on right now because it's mystery knit a long time, and so I might even be knitting today on the stream. I don't know, maybe. But the other thing we have to take care of before we get started is I've got some stuff to drink now. For some reason, I was in a sake mood today. Does anyone in the chat like sake? I really like it. I don't understand it like I do beer. Like, beer for me is something that I understand. I can explain to people. Edward said he must have missed out of the. No, you haven't missed it. No, like, you gotta understand. I usually have like 10 or 12 knitting projects going at once. I'm like this close to being done with Adam's sweater. I just need to add some trim. But like you haven't missed it yet. I've just been knitting other things. I cheat on my knitting projects with other projects. It's just like it's a creativity thing. I get bored sometimes knitting something, so I need to switch it up. All right. So we got some sake likers in the chat. Michael likes sake hot. You know why they make sake hot is because it's the cheap sake and the hotness masks the imperfections. But I do on occasion drink hot sake. But you know what? I there's this new specialty beer store that's like open down the street from me. And so they do have a pretty decent selection of beer, but they also have a pretty decent selection of sake. And so I got like 4 different types. I don't know which one I want to drink. I basically bought I did what women do, and I bought based on what bottle I thought was going to be pretty or that I thought was pretty. So I have this one here that's pink. This is like, it looks like, I don't know if it looks like it might be no, it is filtered. It looks a little cloudy. This one says that it is creamy and naturally sweet. Okay. I have this one, green sake, which is definitely a cloudy one. You can see like, so some sakes are clear and some are cloudy. And then I have this one. This one is sparkling. I just thought the bottle looked cool. And then I have another sparkling one, and this is sparkling rosé sake, which I'm not quite sure about this, to be honest. So I think I want to start. Should I do? Okay, I'm going to ask you guys. We're going to do a quick vote. Pink or green? Pink or green bottle of sake? Which one do you like? Which one should I start with? And we'll go with that. Type chat in your answers. Let me know what you think. Sake is so good. There's so many different types. There's so many different flavors. I tend to like the ones that are cloudy. But pink. Okay, everyone wants me to do pink. Okay, we will do pink. We'll do pink. I'll pour a little glass. Hang on. What's the alcohol content on this? Are you guys going to get me in trouble? Some sakes have more. 12.5. All right. All right. We're going to do it because everyone's voting for pink. All right. All right. I'm just going to pour the whole thing. I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to go for it. So this is what it looks like. It's cloudy. Let's see. It's not bad. Not bad. It is a little sweet. Oh, Judy just finished section 5. Yeah, I think I'm working on section 5, aren't I? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm working on section 5 right now. But I'm liking it. And Judy, I started another one. I started a second mystery yarn along shawl last night. I did. I don't know if I'm gonna finish both, but we're gonna see. I started a second version. All right, let's dig into it, folks. If you haven't already, please mount that like button. If you have not subscribed to my channel, I mean, if you want to hang around, I do content almost every day of the week. I've been taking it a little easy this week just because I haven't been feeling great, to be honest. I feel better today. That's why I'm drinking, but I haven't been feeling great this week, which is why you guys haven't seen a lot of content from me this week. But I will be back next week. So make sure you subscribe. I do content almost every single day of the week around politics, culture, whatever I feel like talking about, but focusing mostly in on what's going on with critical race theory, social justice, woke culture, things like that. So that is my primary focus. Who's ready to start happy hour for today? While I get my screen shared, Chrome tab. The future of civic engagement. We got to make sure that everyone can hear that volume. Who's ready to start happy hour? Go ahead, chat in if you're ready to get going. I'm really actually looking forward to this one. I think that this is going to be interesting. Interesting indeed. All right, let's go, let's go, let's go. Tell me, guys, per usual, if the sound is weird or something like that, because sometimes I like you guys hear the sound differently than I do. And so make sure you let me know. Oh, looks like I just found your channel from Lady Maga. I love Lady Maga. Guys, if you have not seen, so like make sure you go subscribe to Lady Maga. But Lady Maga and I did a podcast together. I think it just got posted. So it was a great interview. I had a great time. Please support Lady Maga because I mean a better patriot you will not find. All right, guys, let's get this party started. Let me know if the volume is working or not. Here we go.
Joining us. I'm Emily Sumner, and I'll be your host today. I'm pleased to be with you on behalf of the SEL Exchange hosted by Castle. Before I share a little bit more about the SEL Exchange, I'm going to go through a few quick tips to help the webinar run smoothly for you. We have the chat open, and many of you have already shared greetings with the group, so keep that up. And you're also welcome to share any thoughts or ideas that come up for you throughout the presentation and chat. You can use that chat feature to reach out to me with any technical problems, and I'll do my best to resolve them for you. One thing you can do right now to make the webinar run smoothly is to close all of the other applications on your computer and all of your other internet browser tabs. So close out Word, PowerPoint, any Adobe applications you have open. This just makes sure all of your internet and computer bandwidth goes to power Zoom. If you do have audio or video lags that last more than a second or two, you can pop out of Zoom and come right back in, and that usually resets the connection for you. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions throughout today's presentation, and we're excited to have them. So we are going to be holding a live Q&A at the end. So feel free to send in those questions as they come up for you throughout the conversation. To ask a question, look for the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar and type your question in there. We'll get it and we'll put it into the queue to be answered during the Q&A period. We are recording today's webinar, and we will email you a link to that recording along with your certificate of attendance. All right, so as many of you know, each year Castle hosts the Social and Emotional Learning, or SEL Exchange, which is a unique and timely forum for those who are committed to social and emotional learning. Last year, Castle had close to 2,500 people from around the globe join the virtual summit, and these included researchers, practitioners, young people.
Okay, just keep in mind that Castle is one of the primary providers of social emotional learning, and they do crazy surveys that basically what happens for people who didn't see the stream yesterday. So social emotional learning is so much scarier than critical race theory. It's not even funny. So social emotional learning starts with the school doing a survey to your child. Now, you can request that the school opt your children out of any surveys, but usually by default they're like opted into them. You have to go to the school and demand they don't take these surveys for them to actually not be taken. And they're going to ask things like like have you ever sold drugs on school property? They're going to ask things like have you had sexual intercourse? How many partners have you had intercourse with? They're going to ask your kids things like what is your gender identity? Are you man, woman, non-binary, gender fluid? They're going to ask all sorts of invasive questions, and they're going to tie your students' answers to their like file, right? These are not anonymous surveys. They are looking for essentially what they're looking is to assess different vulnerabilities in students, and then they target interventions at them. So they will actually target psychological counseling without telling the parents that they're doing it based on the results of these surveys. So just like wrap your head around that for a second. If you did not watch the stream I did yesterday with Sloan, you have got to watch this stream. If you have kids in school, I beg you to watch this stream. Okay? But this company, Castle, is one of the companies that Sloan showed us surveys from yesterday. They're screwing with your kids. This is the government asking for invasive information that they have absolutely no business having on your children. No business at all. So let's just keep that in mind. But it's good that they're having an look. They had their annual conference yesterday with a whole bunch of people to talk about how they're going to destroy children. Okay, let's keep going.
and community leaders. This year's virtual summit is going to be held on October 14th and will offer 4 hours of learning centered around how you can activate SEL to create conditions where young people can find their sense of purpose and channel their strengths towards achieving personal and collective goals.
Okay, so what they just said, how young people can find their sense of purpose and channel their inner strength towards collective goals. Let's just actually listen to that again. Let's listen to that again, and then let's talk about their word choice there.
Summit is going to be held on October 14th and will offer 4 hours of learning centered around how you can activate SEL to create conditions where young people can find their sense of purpose and channel their strengths towards achieving personal and collective goals.
How young people can act and use their channel their fucking collective strength to achieve collective goals. Does that sound like they want them becoming little activists to you? I'm gonna say that sounds like they want them to become little. Why would an organization that's just doing surveys in school want to specifically focus on how young people can become civically involved to contribute to achieving collective goals? Okay.
Registration is open and we've got lots of people already set to join us on October 14th. So we encourage you.
The Brooklyn Way says, I'm just waiting for some base AF kid to lie on the survey and go undercover on some junior Project Veritas tip because I would just put them on blast. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I have young people who watch my channel. I sometimes have young people who send me content. I think it would be pretty epic if a young person did that. I'm just saying.
To register today at the URL we're going to put in chat, which is selexchange.castle.org. I would like to acknowledge the very generous support provided by many organizations that are making a difference with SEL. Our more than 20 sponsors are dedicated to advancing SEL through innovative.
Why do I know Rethink Ed? Why do I know Rethink Ed? Why do I know Rethink Ed? Let me look something up real quick. Hang on. This is important, I think. I am fairly certain Hang on. There's a reason I know Rethink Ed. Who is involved in Rethink Ed? Like the reason, okay, so let me be brass tacks. I think the reason I know them is I think, and I could be wrong, so I want to make sure I'm really qualifying this. I think the person who wrote the letter from the National School Board Association is involved with Rethink Ed. I'm not 100% positive, but I think they might be. So isn't that an interesting coincidence? Isn't that, if I am correct about that, wouldn't that be an interesting coincidence?
Products and programs. And today I want to give an extra thank you to our sponsor of today's webinar and the SEL Exchange, Committee for Children. Committee for Children is a global nonprofit whose work champions the safety and well-being of kids through social and emotional learning. Committee for Children is the creator of the Second Step Social and Emotional Learning Program, and we encourage you to learn more about Committee for Children and Second Step, and we'll share some of that information in chat now, as well as in the follow-up email that you'll receive in the next day or two. All right, so today's panel discussion was actually pre-recorded, so I'm going to start that recording now. But
Oh, it's a
we will be holding
pre-recorded
that live
discussion?
Q&A at the end
Okay.
with Dr. Tia Kim, who is the one moderating the recorded conversation. So just give us a second and we'll get that recording launched for you.
Well, fine. I guess it doesn't matter for our purposes, does it?
Hi there, I'm Tia Kim, the Vice President of Education, Research, and Impact at Committee for Children. Committee for Children is an organization that develops social emotional learning programs and works with educators.
They'll take questions. They said
schools
they were going to do
across the
a
country
Q&A at
to
the
help
end.
support the social emotional competence of children and youth. Today we have a great conversation with some excellent panelists around the intersection of SEL and civic engagement. So let's go ahead and introduce our panelists today. If each of you could just go around and tell us a little bit
Adrian,
about
I think
yourself
he's
and
on
the
their
work you do,
advisory
that would
board
be
or
great.
something.
So why don't we start with Sharon? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do, and then we'll just kind of go around.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Bradley. I am a director of Family and Social Services and Social Emotional Learning in Plano ISD. That is about 20 miles north of Dallas,
Wait.
here in-
Director of Social Services and Social Emotional Learning. How much do you want to bet that in order to, at some point, in order to, if they aren't doing it already, in order to receive social services, these people are going to be required to do something like this? It's the interim president of the National School Board Association, and he's involved in something, and I thought it was Rethink Ed. I could be wrong about that. Again, he's definitely involved in groups like that, though.
in Texas. And I got to say, about 8 years ago, was introduced to social emotional learning, and it just totally invigorated me in my career. I'm now starting my 21st year in education, and I'm just spreading the good news and the good work of SEL that I believe.
Well, that
can be the
sounds like
driving
religion.
force for change, throughout.
Great. Adam, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah, nice to see y'all. My name's Adam Alvarez. I'm an assistant professor in urban education at Rowan University. That's in southern New Jersey. Prior to that, I was an elementary teacher for 6 years. I worked at a residential treatment facility, which is kind of like a juvenile justice setting, but more therapeutic, supposedly. And really, that's where I kind of learned about the various needs that kids have in terms of learning, but then also sort of non-academic skills and learning as well.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. I do not believe that it is the job of government schools to teach children non-academic skills. The job of these schools, This is a professor of education, and he's saying that he just discovered the needs of children through social emotional learning. Government schools that compel people to go through it should not be engaging in social fucking engineering. Sorry. They need to be teaching people how to read, write, and do math, and that's basically all I want them doing. I don't want them doing any of this other crap. Definitely don't want them teaching history anymore. They've shown they can't be trusted to do that.
And I would say probably in my third year, I realized that nothing really gets done in class until teachers learn to be a little bit more caring about their students, to be a little bit more transparent. So I come to this space with, 6 years of elementary teaching. I did my master's in educational leadership and policy. And then my doctorate was in education with an emphasis on urban education. So now my research really looks at the intersection of race, exposure to violence, and trauma in K to 12 teaching and learning context.
Wait,
we have that in common, Adam, actually.
Wait. He studies emotional trauma in the context of teaching and learning. Hang on, I just want to listen to that last bit for one more time.
My research really looks at the intersection of race, exposure to violence, and trauma in K to 12 teaching and learning.
Exposure to violence and trauma in K through 12 teaching and learning. What do you think the chances are that when he says exposure to violence, he doesn't actually mean like physical violence? I think they're probably pretty high.
In context.
Great. We have that in common, Adam. Actually, I worked in a residential treatment facility for adjudicated boys, for youth too. So more on the counseling side, not the education side, but that's a nice connection. Great. Shaniqua, if you can go next and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Shaniqua Mustafa. I am the assistant principal for Carolina Park Elementary School in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I've been in this role for about 2 years. It's amazing here. Little kids are awesome. Prior to being an elementary school principal, I was a 6th grade English teacher at Jerry Zucker Middle School. It's the amazing experience of my life. It was there that I realized and I learned by a conversation with a colleague, sharing some personal experiences that I had been a victim of abuse and trauma. I didn't know that. And she very plainly said that these are things that you experience and they're not okay. Throughout my career, the school adopted a behavioral-based curriculum called Capturing Kids' Hearts. And so the whole premise of the program is that if you can grab a child's heart, you can pretty much teach them anything. A large part of our population at Zucker, those kids.
If you can grab a child's heart, you can pretty much teach them anything. Okay.
Had behavioral challenges. And so we figured if you could connect with them at a social emotional level, then you could teach them anything.
If you can connect with a child at a social emotional level, then you can teach them anything. Yes. And this is the problem. This is the problem. And I talked about this yesterday with Sloan, but anything that you teach a child before they are like 8 or 9 years old, it is damn near impossible to unteach them or for them to unlearn that. It's not impossible, but it's really, really difficult. So these people are they're exploiting children when they are very young, when they are not able to defend themselves, and they're making them do this stuff for years and years. So this is not just an instance of like they do one thing related to social emotional learning and that's the end of it. Your kids, when this is in the school, are going to be barraged constantly with this crap. They do not have the ability to withstand it. Many adults wouldn't have the ability to withstand the years of brainwashing that is going to go on as a result of social emotional learning. You think your 4-year-old's going to understand it, or 5-year-old, or 6-year-old, or 7-year-old? Because that's when they're starting. They're starting very young. Your kids not only do not know what's happening because they're kids, They have no ability to defend themselves, and the school is going to lie to you about what they are doing. Yeah, this is a form of grooming. This is the easiest way to understand social emotional learning. It is a form of grooming in which they work for years to bring down your children's defenses. And the worst thing is, to be honest, most of the teachers doing this crap don't know what they're doing. They do not understand how nefarious it is because they were brought through the same system. Melissa, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Just chat in your message. I'll keep an eye out for it because you sent in the super chat. I'm not sure why that didn't work, but I'm happy to keep an eye out for it. Nick H says transparent. What a joke these people are. That is exactly correct. Exactly correct. All right.
During my time there that I realized that my own personal experiences mirrored like their present experiences. And so it was through those experiences that I was able to like establish organic relationships with kids. And it made it easy to teach them content. You just can't teach a kid English if their basic needs are not being met. So you have to acknowledge that you have to teach the whole kid in order to get the content in.
Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for sharing a little bit about yourselves. But just to start us off, I'd really like us to just think a little bit about social emotional learning, particularly given these times. All of you are in education or are educators.
You know, I saw a lot of people in the comments on my stream yesterday saying something like this. This isn't SEL. SEL is for understanding base level emotions for personal growth, not for teachers to make a connection. This is fucking crazy. Listen, I'm sorry. Elementary school teachers have no business. They have no business talking about anything related to base level emotions or personal growth with children. I have a literal PhD in psychology. I can't talk about this shit because it's unethical. It is blatantly unethical. Teachers that are doing this are practicing psychology without a license. Teachers have no business doing this. This should be left for the parents. This is for the parents, not for the teachers.
And so most of the schools in our country have gone back to fully in-person education, either this week.
Which I'm sure they don't like that. Melissa says something similar started in my local high school last year. After the survey, Melissa, this is social emotional learning. After the survey, kids had to discuss their mental health, sexuality, etc. in a classroom setting with peers and teachers with no mental health training. This is social emotional learning. What Melissa just described is social emotional learning. Your kids are going to have to talk about their gender identity before they're in middle school. Your kids are going to have to talk about their sexuality before they're in middle school. This is going on in classrooms right now. That's not critical race theory. This is much more dangerous than critical race theory.
Week or the following past month. And so, they've been dealing with a lot. I know for myself, the past year and a half has been a roller coaster of emotions. There's, from fear to kind of loneliness and sadness and kind of fear of the uncertainty and unknown. I know my kids have felt the same way. And I know a lot of students are coming to our classrooms like that. So just in your own work and your own thinking, what do you think is the best supports and mechanisms that schools and classrooms can set up to really support kids as they move back into in-person school and to really meet and support their social emotional needs? So, anyone just jump in with your thoughts.
Wow.
I just saw a question come in. No, critical race theory does not fall under social emotional learning. No. I mean, all of the things that are going on in the world right now are related tangentially to each other, but critical race theory does not fall under social emotional learning. And anyone who tells you, and I'm sorry, like I love James Lindsay and I love Chris Rufo, but both of them are guilty of this. Anyone tells you that social emotional learning is a delivery mechanism for critical race theory is really underselling how dangerous social emotional learning is. Because it's not just about delivering critical race theory. It is about dissolving the psychological boundaries and defenses that children have when they are very young. Now, can that lead to easier delivery of critical race theory? Sure. Can lead to easier delivery of a lot of things. It can lead to easier delivery of every single bad idea that the left has. This is the ball game, guys. This is the ball game. This is the beginning and the end of the conversation right here. Yeah, exactly. So we agree, Based for Life. Teachers should not be doing this at all. No, they should not. No, they should not. Melissa goes on, there were kids with eating disorders, serious anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. Peers, teachers, parents, etc. gain private information that can be used and abused. This is a really important point, guys. What they're doing is they survey the children most of the time without the parents realizing what's happening around every single private issue that you can imagine. Again, they survey them about their sexuality when they're young. They survey them about their gender identity. They survey them about their activities. And that goes into a file that is forever attached to the student. And then they start to deliver counseling based on that without telling the parents. Can you imagine? And some of the questions that they're asking on these surveys are specifically designed to root out people that do not agree with the mainstream narrative. They are specifically designed to identify people who need additional re-education. It's one of the most insidious things I've ever seen in my life.
Well, you're right. The last 18 months has been hard on everyone. And in my opinion, I believe that intentionally focusing on that social reconnection, I think is key. And that is infusing relationship building activities into the existing structures. And the reason why, over the last 18 months, everyone.
The reason why is that children have been completely abused by the education system and the teacher unions to where they are now not able to even have simple conversations. Could that be it? You know, it's so insidious, isn't it? Isn't it convenient that the teachers and the teachers unions did everything that they could for the past year and a half to psychologically abuse their students? They kept them out of school. They kept them away from their friends. When they go back to school, they're forced to wear masks. They're not allowed to talk to one another. They're not allowed to express themselves. These people have literally done every single thing that they can reasonably do within the law to abuse your children. And now what they're doing is saying, "Oh, we have to bring in social emotional learning to help fix the problem." Because these kids, they just don't know how to relationship build. They just don't have empathy for others anymore. We have to teach them how to have good relationships with other people. Isn't that convenient? Isn't it convenient that these people did not care about the mental health of your children for the past year and a half? And now all of a sudden they do. And oh, they have a program to fix it. Isn't it convenient?
Adults, students, they've had to live and work in these odd, extensive circumstances, and everyone's story is different. So now that we're all coming back together, just being intentional about that social reconnection so that we can reestablish not just the physical safety, but the psychological and emotional safety, because when our kids feel safe, they can learn.
Can I add to that, Ms. Sharon? I think also being like intentional to create like opportunity and space. I know sometimes when you work with teachers, we like to be in control of things and we like to know what's happening next. And we like agendas and bullet points, and we have scope and sequence and timelines and things that we have to check off. But I believe like just creating opportunities to have space within our classrooms. Content is always going to be there. You'll always have opportunity to teach science and social studies and math and all of those things, but just being really intentional about creating space and like making times and moment to build, reconnect like culture and climate within our classroom. you made a very great point that the past 18 months has looked totally different for everybody, even the people that are on a part of this conference call at the moment. So maybe giving a time to acknowledge that, giving an opportunity for kids to feel their big feelings or their big emotions, and then giving name to those things. Just creating a space where it feels like safe to be able to do that. Sometimes we get in a rush to do the things that seem important, but they're not always the most important thing to do at that time.
I just want to say that this is like a highly produced webinar, which makes me think that Castle has a lot of effing money, because I've worked with like different consulting companies that don't produce webinars like this. They've got a whole studio. Like, this is a nice setup. There was nice editing done to this. That organization probably has a lot of money. Sin said schools are now re-education camps. I think schools have been re-education camps for a while, but this is going to seal the deal.
So I have a question. I really do resonate with the creating better connections, the social connections in particular, because a lot of kids have not been in person for a really long time. Does anyone have like a really good activity or an idea that they've used in the classroom before that they feel really works and helps build these connections or relationships? I'd love to hear.
Well, for me, tonight will be my first class back. So I don't have a set of strategies, but for me, it always comes back to, the idea of humanization. And so I think that even, when I think back to my elementary.
Okay, I want to say this. Listen, you don't need to teach young children that their classmates are human beings. Young kids know this. Young kids have not been spoiled by the world yet. Young kids come into this world knowing that we're all connected, and then they unlearn it as they grow older. But look at the way young kids behave around each other. They don't care about race, they don't care about gender, they don't care about any of these things. They just like to be around their friends and play with their friends, and they know who they like and who they feel good around. You do not need to teach young children how to be kind, empathetic human beings. Reagan says it in the chat. They're innocent and genuine. They have not been ruined by the world yet. You don't need to do this type of social engineering with young children. You need to get out of the flipping way and let them be kids. That's what you need to do. Yes, they are. Southern Northeast, we're going to be talking about this. I have Justice coming on the channel on Tuesday, I believe, and we're going to be talking about social emotional learning specifically in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and you are 100% correct. It is in New Hampshire. We have documents from the Department of Education. It is absolutely 100% in New Hampshire. No question.
Teaching years, a lot of what was really successful for me was just being transparent and recognizing the different power dynamics that I'm involved in, so recognizing the different power dynamics in the class, such as.
Yeah, I kind of thought you were. I don't know exactly who you are, but I thought you might be. I thought you might. Yeah, definitely message me on there. And let me know who you are too, because I'm curious. I have some ideas about who you are, but let me know who you are.
My being a man, being a large, physically large man, also being a professor in a room of students. I think too many times those power relationships go unaddressed, and we do more harm than good. So, just being upfront about the different types of privileges we have sometimes can be really helpful for bringing down barriers between students and teachers. And I suspect the same is true for little ones as well, So that would be probably my number one thing, would be to think about different ways to humanize and be transparent and vulnerable, set the example, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was about to say something similar. Having community building activities or relationship building questions that you can possibly ask, once every day, or whatever is the timeline that fits within
Once
your
every
space.
day.
Research shows that when we
Wait. I'm sorry. I was focused on getting the chat in the Mises Caucus chat. Hang on. What did she just say we're doing this once every day?
Set the example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was about to say something similar. Having community building activities or relationship building questions.
Community building activities. Guys, okay, so pop quiz. And I don't know that I'm right about this one. I'll take your ideas. Pop quiz. What do you think they're trying to do when they are talking about community building activities that they're doing once a day in the classroom? What do you think the goal is of that? And as a helpful hint, I want you to think about the difference between equity and equality. If they're talking about community building activities that they're doing once a day to socially engineer the emotions of young students, what do you think they're doing? Yeah. I think they're trying to teach them to be little collectivists. Yep, they're creating activists. M169, I got your email, by the way. Don't worry about it. No big deal. I just have to cover my bases with YouTube. Don't worry about it at all. Indoctrination, yep. Love, laugh, live, yep. Yeah, this is another one. This is another one. They don't like it when parents are involved. Yeah, I think if we're talking about community building activities and they're also talking about breaking down the emotional defenses of students, or like, yeah, that's what they're doing. They're not talking overtly about it. What I think they're trying to do is to make little collectivists, people who see themselves and their obligation to the greater whole rather than to themselves as individuals. They're priming them to ascribe to a groupthink ideology. That's what they're doing. They're priming them to ascribe to groupthink.
Ask, once every day or whatever is the timeline that fits within your space. Research shows that when we know more about each other, we treat each other better. And so if we are asking kids questions so they can share a little bit about themselves with us, I think we, just like what you're doing, we should share a little bit of ourselves with them. And over time, their relationship would build.
Wrong. Why are teachers sharing personal information with students? That's what she just said, right? We're asking kids to share a little bit of themselves with us, and so in return, we have to share a little bit of ourselves with them. No, that is wrong. That is not correct.
Grow, and the whole goal would be that the kids would connect with one another so that the kids can connect with us as educators. So at that point, they can connect to the content.
That's grooming.
That we should all
That's grooming.
It makes me think about an icebreaker activity I did at the middle school level. It just involved like a ball of yarn that you purchase from Walmart. And so I would start holding the yarn. I would stand in the...
Hang on. The first mistake that she made was purchasing yarn from Walmart. You don't purchase yarn from Walmart. At Walmart, you're going to get synthetic yarn at best. You do not purchase yarn from Walmart. Rule number 1. You want natural fiber. You want merino. You want alpaca. You want something nice and soft. This is Ching Fibers Dashing Sassy, which I got from Stephen and Penelope. I'm enjoying this. This is good yarn. Not Walmart yarn. Walmart has stepped up its game in some regards, but no, you do not buy yarn at Walmart. Sorry. I know that's not the point of this, but I'm going to take major umbrage.
In the middle of a circle, the students would circulate themselves around the classroom. And then I would tell them who I was, where I was from, and where I worked. And someone within that circle, if they were able to identify with something that I said, I would toss the yarn to them, continuing to hold my string. I had to wrap it around my finger. And then when the next person got the yarn, they would say something about themselves and where they grew up or something that they like to eat. And then when someone else in the circle identified, they would raise their hand and they toss the yarn. And so what happened over the course of the activity is that you had interconnectedness. So you had yarn going from different angles. And it started with me, but it didn't end with me. And so the whole point of that icebreaker was to get the students to see that we're connected, even though we didn't all know each other prior to this moment.
It's the goal is to get them to see themselves as part of the larger group, and that we all have an obligation to one another, and that we can be little collectivists, and that if we want to protect our neighbors, all we should do is get the vaccine, like, because you're not a good person and not protecting your community unless you're getting vaccinated. And of course, you should check with the CDC, because the CDC has approved all the vaccines. They are eminently safe. You should refer to the CDC for all your vaccine-related information. They'll tell you right where to get the vaccine. And you can only be a good neighbor to your community if you get vaccinated. Everyone else is, awful people that just don't care about grandma dying.
So many things outside of this classroom that connects us. And so we take those same connections, we bring them into the room, and then we build our family, and then we create our climate, and then we build our classroom culture. And so always going back to, we're connected that way. Even when we can't see it, we all are.
Oh my gosh, I
That
love that
definitely doesn't
activity
sound like a
because
cult-like tactic.
society makes us focus on how we're so different, but that activity just lifts up how we're so much more alike. Oh my God, love it.
You know what, Sharon? You made me think about something my grandmama used to tell me, and I'm famous for grandmama colloquialisms because I'm from the South. And she would all say that. She would all say, at the end of the day, we all cry to seeing blood, right? And so what she means by that is whenever pain hits our lives, the way that pain impacts us is all the same. That's one commonality that we have as people. And so when we take those similarities and we build upon those and we share those things, it keeps us together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I want to add there too that to the point of healing and really collective healing. I think a lot of the times our conversations focus more on individual type stuff, but in reality, to your point or your grandmama's point, is if I'm hurting, then it really is your problem too, because if we're working in a teaching and learning context, right, and I'm your student and I'm hurt and I'm having some struggles here, then that impacts you and that impacts the environment of the class, right? So it's our best interest to what I say, learn to shoulder each other's burdens.
It's in our best interest to learn to shoulder each other's burdens. Okay, I have a lot of questions. The first question is, why do elementary age children need to be taught that it is their responsibility to shoulder the burdens of other people? We are talking 10 years old and younger. 10 years old and younger. And they're being taught that it is their responsibility to shoulder the burdens of the people around them. That doesn't seem very, very sane to me. That doesn't seem like something I want a child learning. But how else do you make little collectivists and little social activists other than to teach them that they are responsible to the community and to the community first? And they should give up what they like for the sake of the community feeling more comfortable.
And that's really what this work has been for me, is trying to understand what that looks like in different areas, and really moving us more toward a collective healing mindset, I think.
I like that. I don't know if I've ever
Move towards a collective healing mindset. What are we healing? What are we healing exactly? And why does the collective need to heal anything? Guys, just like as much as you can, pay attention very specifically to the language that these people use. And not just this, like anytime you're watching any of their material, really pay attention to the specific word choice that they're using. Because sometimes, and Patrice just said it, sometimes they say the quiet part out loud, but you also, and maybe it's just me because I'm just like, I developed a habit of just paying really close attention to people's language. Like you start to see patterns in the language. And you start to very quickly be able to suss out what they're really saying. And the context that you need to have is every single thing that they are doing. Every single thing from lockdowns to masks to vax mandates to CRT to social emotional learning to every single thing is designed to destabilize the system. So you always have to listen to their language in reference to the fact that the ultimate goal for every single one of these people is to destabilize the system. That is the goal. That is the end result because they cannot implement their little Marxist utopia unless they destabilize the system. So, what are they doing here? What are they doing with social emotional learning? What they're doing is to indoctrinate their child soldiers into the movement. This is just like China. China did this. China weaponized the youth of the country to advance Mao's agenda. They're doing the exact same thing. And they're doing it through government funded schools. Well, I mean, Russia got something right. Scientology is crazy. I guess you should be able to be a part of a cult if you want to be. That's what freedom looks like. But anyway, let's keep going.
Ever heard a term that way? A collective healing, like mindset.
Oh, isn't that a good term?
I like it, I
collective
think.
healing. I like that.
I like that.
School principal. I like
Great,
that. Collective healing.
I love concrete ideas, and so Shanika, I really love the yarn activity. I have a 5th grade son, and the first
People
week
are
of
even
school, we did a
bastardizing
lot of
yarn.
social connection activities, and he told me something similar to what you did. They had a water bottle. They each put their water bottle in front of them, and then someone would go in the middle of the circle and say something about themselves, and then if you agreed, you would go in the circle with them. And you can kind of see how much similarity you had with each other. So I love very concrete activities like that. I think educators are super creative in coming up with these things.
Thank you, Free Speech Mom. Good call.
I think the past year and a half, particularly with the pandemic and remote learning, in a lot of ways has had disproportionate kind of impacts on different groups of people. Maybe communities of color, marginalized communities, low income or single parent families, and those kinds of things. So as we go back to school this fall, how can districts and schools, in your ideas, meet every student's social, emotional, and academic needs in ways that are equitable and inclusive? So I would just love to hear your
There it is. Ding, 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 ding. Let's just listen to that again. Let's listen to that part again. That's an important question. They said the magic words.
This fall, how can districts and schools, in your ideas, meet every student's social, emotional, and academic needs in ways that are equitable and inclusive? So
how can we meet every student's social, emotional, and academic needs? Notice academic is prioritized after social and emotional so that we are equitable and inclusive. Equity is code for critical race theory. Anytime you hear the word equity mentioned, anytime you hear the word anti-racism mentioned, yeah, Josh, oh my gosh, we're not really, like, you can play bingo if you want, but, like, I didn't think this was going to be good for bingo. You guys can play bingo if you want. Yeah, anytime you hear any of these words, they all mean, for so far as we are concerned, basically the same thing. Do not ever allow a teacher or a principal to say, we're not doing critical race theory, we're doing equity. Or we're not doing social emotional learning, we're doing equity. Or even now, we're not doing equity, we're doing social emotional learning. They're all the same thing. For our purposes, they all mean the same thing, more or less.
I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, honestly, the schools can't do it alone. You hear the phrase, it takes a village. It's going to take a community. The Throughout the pandemic, and
Every time you hear the schools, them talking about the schools, you have to think the government. This was a really good point that Sloan made on the stream yesterday. And of course, you know, people do refer to them as government schools. Public schools are the government, guys. We need to be training ourselves to every single time someone, like she just said, the schools can't do it alone. Okay, that means the government can't indoctrinate your kids without your help. The schools can't do it alone. That means the government can't do it alone. Don't ever let them convince you. The greatest trick that the teachers' unions ever played was convincing the public that teachers are not government employees.
I know in our district and in Texas, you hear about the mobile food pantries, companies providing free Wi-Fi service for families.
Oh, got some super chats coming in. Josh, oh my gosh, says it's like a giant blob hydra made of Marxist teaching. That's exactly right. Every single thing that is happening in our culture today is related to this in some way. It might be tangentially, but the goal is ultimately the same. What is our goal? What did I just say the goal was like 10 minutes ago? Chat it in if you remember. Wimsat, as soon as they say equity, they are doing CRT. It seems that teachers are so done with trying to make students better, they want to destroy them. Well, teachers don't know. Teachers don't know. They don't know what they're doing because they've been through this system as well. They got indoctrinated into it too. They don't know. Yeah. The goal of all of this is to create little activists in order to destabilize the system. AD says the American Medical Association want to put equity into emergency triage protocols. That's right, they do. They're actually already starting to. That would take, among other things, SES factors. What do you think? I think it's pretty dangerous to prioritize medical treatment based on the color of someone's skin. That's already happening in some hospitals. They are literally prioritizing medical treatment based on the color of people's skins. That's real.
The problem is these issues, for this population, it's always been the same. It's just been kind of lifted and highlighted, because of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, the schools, it was their responsibility. But when
Yeah, Alice over on Odyssey says it's normalizing the P word in the long run, having to do with children being overly sexualized. I'm not going to say it. That's absolutely correct. It absolutely is. Guys, just as a reminder, I am streaming on Odyssey, Rockfin, Facebook, and 2 different YouTube channels at the moment. If you want to support Alt Tech, please find me over on on Odyssey and Rockfin. Please make sure you're subscribing on there. My personal favorite of the YouTube alternatives is Odyssey. I think Odyssey is really great. I think that Jeremy Kaufman and his team are doing really great work over there. And so that would be my priorities. But of course, make sure you join us in Locals as well. You can get my videos ad-free in Locals. And that's going to become important because Odyssey is going to launch ads pretty soon. So I've got the ticker going, kb.locals.com if you want to join my Locals. And please subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on. And make sure you mount that like button or the flame on Odyssey or whatever else you're watching on.
we notice when the community agencies, for food pantries or food banks, the counseling agencies, all these different groups getting together to work together to serve the needs of these marginalized groups, that is when we really began to make headway and increase access and opportunities for families who've always needed it.
Yeah, I think for me, at least in this part of the country, it's becoming increasingly more important to focus on where those inequities are. So, you know, a lot of school districts just operate status quo like, and maybe this will be an event that causes folks to slow down for a second and focus on what the inequities are. All right, and who is being excluded. Those are things that I think we have to identify first in order to really put something in place. So that's something that I think schools will certainly need to do a better job at. One of the things that I've seen work here is maybe appointing a few key folks to kind of marshal the transformative work. You know, so for one, to take up the job of identifying where the biggest gaps are, and then coming together to use that data to try to drive some sort of policy or initiatives around closing those gaps. At Rowan, we have the Partnership for Educational Equity and Research that's headed up by Dr. Zion. She works with me and leads that group. But we work with 26 school districts around.
Wait. Did he just say they have a whole department of educational equity? And he was just about to say they work with 26 school districts? Hang on. Sometimes it takes a second for me to process what I'm hearing. Hang on.
Appointing a few key folks to kind of marshal the transformative work, you know, so for one, to take up the job of identifying where the biggest gaps are, and then coming together to use that data to try to drive some sort of policy or initiatives around closing those gaps. At Rowan, we have the Partnership for Educational Equity and Research that's headed up by Dr. Zion. She works with me and leads that group. But we work with 26 school districts around our area. And basically our job is to develop these long-term partnerships to spend the first year sort of building some foundational content knowledge, second year building some research skills so that they can analyze what's going on in their own context. And then as a part of our graduate.
So the universities are partnering with the local schools in order to help them be more effective at socially engineering the population. That's what he's saying right now.
Release and responsibility. The third year is really us, you know, just kind of supervising that process. Because we're really trying to build autonomy too, so that the next time.
No, Albert, I'm looking at you. No, this is not a rebranding of critical race theory. No. People have okay. I have high expectations for everyone watching Happy Hour because many of you watch week after week. We do this together. It's a fun activity. It helps us, you know, blow off steam. But I have higher expectations of you guys than I do of the general population. This is not critical race theory. It is not. It is something that is far worse than critical race theory. This is not about the critical race theory is about like subject matter for the most part. This is not about that. This is about screwing with your children psychologically. This is so much worse than just saying white people have all the power in society. It is so much worse than that. And I'm literally like I feel like I'm on my knees begging people to stop saying that this is critical race theory. No. Every bad idea the left has is applied through this. I'm gonna start getting really stern with you guys because I expect higher standards. You all know better. You do. If you just frame this in terms of critical race theory, you are missing the bigger point. Critical race theory is this much part of the problem of a problem that's this fucking big, and I'm reaching my arms out and I'm 5'6", and so that's how far my arms might stretch. Critical race theory is this. This is a much bigger effing problem than critical race theory. It's like one small, tiny, minute sliver of a much more complex problem. And the reason I'm being so harsh on this, and I need people to get this quickly, because this is something that kind of snuck up on us. I need people to get it quickly. The more we brand this as being the same thing as critical race theory, or being a rebranding of critical race theory, or being a delivery mechanism for critical race theory, the more we miss the much larger problem, because it is so much worse than critical race theory. What we are talking about will do very real and very lasting psychological damage to every single child who gets caught up in it, regardless of whether the school is doing critical race theory or not. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Okay? We have got to start focusing on the bigger picture. No. Stop framing this in terms of critical race theory. You all need to stop. I mean, you can do it if you want to. Listen, I'm not going to be the goddamn police about this. You are all adults. You all can make the choice to act responsibly or not. But I'm telling you that every single time that someone makes the choice, because it is a choice, every single time that someone makes the choice to say that this is related to critical race theory and it's only critical race theory, that every single time you are doing a disservice to what this is. This is not the same thing as critical race theory. It is not. In any way. And every single time that it is related to critical race theory, it is inhibiting the fight against this problem. It is making it harder. It is making it worse. It is making it more difficult. It is creating a more uninformed populace. And I know everyone means well, and I know people are coming from a good place, and I don't want to make it seem like like this is a new thing for everyone, and I understand that. I understand everyone means well and has positive intention. But I know how crowds adopt language, and I know how they frame things. I'm very good at fucking predicting these things. And every single time that this is equated to critical race theory, it is doing harm to actually solving the larger problem, because it's forcing people to focus on the thing that's this big and totally missing the forest through the damn trees. If you solve the critical race theory piece of this, fine, whatever. Doesn't matter. You know what this is like? And I swear I'm going to stop ranting and we're going to get back to the video in a second. You know what this is like? This is like in the state of New Hampshire when they were like, we passed an anti-critical race theory bill. Yay, us. And I was like, but what about the parts you took out of the bill that still made teaching critical race theory like extremely possible? Even if they don't call it critical race theory, because that's exactly what happened in New Hampshire. They completely watered down the anti-CRT bill and took out key provisions that allowed every teacher in New Hampshire to still teach critical race theory. They just have to call it something else. And the GOP's running around saying, yay, we banned critical race theory. No, they didn't. Critical race theory is still taught in New Hampshire schools. They changed nothing. They changed literally nothing about what they were doing. The bill did absolutely nothing. But everyone's like, oh, pat ourselves on the back for banning CRT. They didn't ban CRT. And the reason is they focused on the smallest possible thing, and they missed the forest through the trees, and they felt like they did something, and they cheer that they did something, and they brag about that they did something, and they lie to their constituents all the time, saying, we banned this thing that you don't like. They didn't ban it. It is still in every school that it was in before. They accomplished nothing. They did nothing. And then they went around and lied to their constituents about it, so everyone thinks it's gone when in fact it's not. That's what this is. If you focus on the little thing, you miss the much more important picture. Nick H says SEL SEL be used to batter a kid's defense to open them up to everything else. They are literally going to bully / scare these kids to mold them into whatever. That is exactly right, Nick. That is exactly right. Social emotional learning is how they mold your kids into whatever they want them to be. It's so much worse than critical race theory. It is so much worse. Yes, Jeremy. Well done. It's Maoism. That is exactly correct. This is how social emotional learning is how they're going to weaponize your kids for the specific intent of cultural revolution. That's what it is. And thank you, Jeremy, for that $5 super chat. Janet M says, "You're right, Carlin. I am thinking they let us all be distracted fighting CRT when they're..." Yep, that's exactly right. They are distracting everyone. And the influencers are too, because guess what, guys? Guess what gets clicks now online? Critical race theory, critical race theory, critical race theory. So all the influencers are using it to get clicks and shares on their content and retweets. And again, I don't mean to be harsh, and I don't mean to like, but we all need to just like, we all need to get it. We all need to get it.
The next big event comes, they'll have some skills and a group of people that can take the charge up. So I think we need to see more of that, what I call like micro movements developing within school districts so that they can be much more responsive to this work. So hopefully we will see that more across the country.
Great. I'd love to move to the topic of civic engagement, which is really, I think, the bulk of our conversation. And where
Melissa just made a great analogy in the chat. Melissa says social emotional learning is changing the hardware of the developing brain. CRT is just one of any number of software programs that can be used. That's exactly right. Plug in any software program and they can implement it just as easily. That's a really great analogy, Melissa. Well done.
Conversation. So it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently, particularly the intersection.
Oh, Nick Miles in the house. Walkaway zone. Nick Miles. You know who I am, Nick. And why aren't I at happy hour? Nick, you want to come on happy hour? You can always come on happy hour, my friend. I'm drinking sake today. Cheers. Cheers. Hey, Nick, look at what I posted on Twitter about our friend Lauren Witzke earlier. Lauren Witzke's hanging out with the white positivity movement.
Social emotional learning and civic engagement. But, as I was preparing for our discussion today, I was thinking, like, what does civic engagement really mean? Like, does it mean different things to different folks? And I was reflecting on what it really meant to me and how I defined it. And I was just thinking about young people these days. And in a lot of ways, I think they're much more civically engaged than I was when I was their age. Like, I think back to my own youth. I don't think I got really civically minded or civically engaged probably till I was in college. And I remember distinctly, I'm a psychologist. I was a psychology major.
Oh, what a coincidence that she got civically minded in college and now the youth are getting civically minded much younger. What a coincidence. Josh, oh my gosh, asked what brand of sake? Pink Bottle. I don't know what that is. Pink Bottle. That's the brand. I don't know any of the sake names. I'm working on it. I know them by bottle.
I took a class on psychology of women. And I remember coming home.
Of course, it was the psychology of women class that got her to become an activist.
My family, and just having a really heated conversation with my dad about gender inequities, because I was learning it all in class, and just getting really motivated to do stuff around that, and having this heated conversation with my dad. And my sister, who was younger than me at the time, was in high school, and she's like, okay, that was a scary conversation because we were, kind of arguing about it and discussing it. But now I have a 13-year-old, and he has those conversations with me all the time. And he's been having those conversations with me for years on different topics. And I just think back, I never thought that way when I was his age. And I see a lot of his peer groups doing the same. And so, that in a lot of ways is very promising to me, that young people are thinking about these issues that affect their community. And so I would just love to hear, like, what does civic engagement mean to you? And how do you kind of define it, or what do you see? How do you see it defined in action, I guess, is another way to think about it.
Well, Tia, I have a 14-year-old.
Okay.
And I have similar conversations.
Are they heated as mine, though? Because mine can get a little heated with him.
I think it's just this generation, I mean, we've all heard of cancel culture. They are first to call out what is not right, and they're very and it's more than talk. They decide to not engage with that particular person or product. But if I was to describe or define civil engagement, I think it's putting your passion, that fire, into action to work towards a better world.
So how do we think in terms of weaponizing the youth in order to enhance their civic engagement? What sort of better world do you think they're going to be working towards? I have some ideas about what they mean about that. Maybe they'll elaborate.
I do, and this is a very passionate generation.
Yes, I totally agree. And in a lot of ways, it's very impressive to me because I don't think I was that passionate when I was that young.
Bold.
Yes, very so.
Maybe as we get older too, we're like frustrated, like y'all need to slow down. You know what I mean? Like be a kid for a minute.
You're not allowing them
to the point about civic engagement. I think for me, it's really about holding some sort of position. You know, like I think at least in the work that I've done with teachers and college students, we really try to move away from this position of neutrality, where you don't necessarily have to take a stance. And what we've learned.
Did you just hear that? We've moved away from a position of neutrality where you don't have to take a stance. Oh, really? Elementary education professor. Let's hear that again.
To slow down, you know what I mean? Like be a kid for a minute. I to the point about civic engagement, I think for me, it's really about holding some sort of position. You know, like I think at least in the work that I've done with teachers and college students, we really try to move away from this position of neutrality, where you don't necessarily have to take a stance. And what we've learned about that is a neutral stance is really a pro status quo stance. You know, so whether that's
a neutral stance is a pro status quo stance. What is the opposite of the status quo? I'm going to guess it's progress. What do they mean when they say progressive? Wow, this guy is great for saying the quiet part out loud. I should get this dude on an interview or something. Bye, Nick. See you next week. Hopefully you come on out. You're welcome to come on if you want, my friend. Let me know.
Conflict avoidant behavior, or you know, it's contextually driven, meaning, you know, around these folks I can really be myself, but around these folks I can't really say too much because I don't want to, you know, be excluded from the social relationships. But I think when we think about civic engagement, it's about holding a position on matters, and it's about engaging in action toward advancing your position. And then thirdly, I would say it's also about being reflective about that. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, because I got a 22-year-old, a 19-year-old, my 5-year-old he argues, but he doesn't really have a position. But like with my oldest ones, they can do the first two, that is hold a position, try to advance an agenda, but I don't think they're being very reflective about what it is that they're saying. You know, what are the long-term implications? Where do they get that information from? You know, when I think about civic engagement, I really think about like it's much richer than I think our kids understand it to be. And so, you know, to that point, are we just not teaching the different layers of civic engagement? I don't really know, but I do see more of it. I think there's less reflection on the positions that they're taking.
Do you see? So I guess another way to interpret that is it's a lot of loud voices, but maybe not a reflection of what they're saying, I guess, or supporting would be.
That's actually, you know what? I'm gonna give them props for that. Yes, you are correct. There's when it comes to activism that's being promoted by people like this, it's a lot of loud voices, but not necessarily a lot of reflection on what they're actually saying. Yes, on that we agree.
Would that be another way to think about what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah, I think that there's a deeper skill involved with that reflection piece. So here's what I think. Here's how I know, where those ideas came from. So, for example, a lot of my new thinking is coming from new information that I've received from professors and so forth. And so then we add that into our lexicon and test it out, and we get different responses, and we go, oh, okay, so this is okay. I like this position. But how do we enhance their ability to be reflective on that, and who's impacted by those beliefs and positions and so forth? Those are some of the deeper questions that I think we could still answer with our kids, particularly with the older ones.
Can I add to your comment? I agree with both of you, but to the reflective piece, I think a way to maybe best support those that are younger than us, and I have a 19-year-old son that's very vocal about a lot of different things, where he receives his information on all times. I'm not always sure. Social media plays a big part in his decision making and the way that he forms his opinions. But I think when I say we, I'm including myself with this and being reflective, thinking about the way or the ramification or the weight of our words and how they impact others around us, that may help provide just a little bit more context for your son, I'm thinking about. So when you say something and you've already allowed it to come out of your mouth, like, who are your words impacting? How long is that impact going to last? One thing about your words is you cannot retract them, because people will always, they may forget what you said, but they're going to remember how your words impacted them and how they made you feel. And I guess that's also another piece of social emotional learning, thinking about what you're doing and what you're saying and how it's impacting the community and the world around you. You're responsible for what you say.
Thinking about what you're saying and what you're doing and how it's impacting the community around you. And I don't want to make it seem like I don't think that you should think about what you're saying and what you're doing and the impact on people. Of course, I think you should, but I fundamentally mean it in a much different way than these people mean it. Because at the end of the day, I don't think that people have an obligation to make sure that other people aren't upset by their words or their actions. People need to be responsible to their own emotions. But when these people are talking, it's like the community is the paramount, and the community is paramount to the detriment of the individual. One of the things I find so disturbing about social emotional learning is that it is going to impair the development of the individual. What I mean by that is we're talking about kids, right? We're talking about kids. And so say you have a teacher that presents a gender spectrum from male on this side and female on this side, and then you can be anywhere in between, and put a card on where you feel like you lie on the gender spectrum. And then you have kids that are like, I don't know if I'm a boy or a girl because I don't even know what those concepts mean. I'm 7 or 8 years old. I have no idea. But they put their card in the middle because that's what the teacher's going to possibly, oh, so you must be non-binary. Oh, aren't you special? Or aren't you great? Oh, stunning and brave. And you get a whole bunch of kids doing that. And then all of a sudden the kid that's like, I'm a boy, but everyone else is in the middle. So am I weird for being a boy? They're not allowing these kids to develop naturally into who they are, who they were born to be. They're constantly going to question it. Deborah Evans, thank you for the $25 super chat. This is not new. In 1992, John Gatto wrote that this is what publicly funded schools were designed to do. From the beginning, it turns out that people meet the requirements of whatever government and business want. Yeah, I mean, and there's actually a clip on this channel of Deb, a chat I had with Deb and Justice the other day, where Deb was reading quotes from people who from books talking about how our education system was designed that say exactly the same thing. This is what the education system was designed to do. It is working as it was intended to work. And that's why I've become a very big proponent of you have to pull your kids out of the schools. The schools are never going to be improved unless there is massive, dare I say, revolutionary change. Catalyst, if you keep chatting in the same thing, I'm going to block you. It's not a question I feel like answering right now because there's like no reason. Like, I don't know why it's such a big deal, to be honest.
Say. And so maybe incorporating that or teaching that piece to our children will maybe help quiet down some of our more vocal persons and their opinions that are very strong.
If you want to super chat it in, then I'll answer it then. But you're not going to spam my chat with the same question.
Actually, Shanika, to my next question or thought is really, what do you see as the intersection between social emotional learning and civic engagement? I think there's been a lot of discourse lately around how social emotional learning could play a bigger part in helping youth be more civically engaged. And so just would love to hear your thoughts on that. And how does supporting SEL in particular help with civic engagement?
Patrice took matters into her own hands
earlier today, and sharing with her about this experience in particular and letting her know how excited I was about it. And one of the things that I took away from the conversation and shared was that oftentimes when SEL is presented at a school level, it's almost like what happens at the school is what you learn, but that isn't always transcribed into your home life or at work. And so it's almost like it's compartmentalized. This is what I learned at school. This is SEL. And then when I get home, those same conversations are not had or the language is not had. And so the awareness of self and the social emotional learning that I'm experiencing there, it's not permeating my house. And so I think that there is a breakdown between where the information is being shared and
All
how
good, Patrice.
it's impacting our homes and our communities. It's almost like a container or a vessel. If I were to bring in a vase and I constantly pour SEL content into it and love and support and all of those great things, and I do that Monday through Friday, but there's a pinhole on the side of it, and I send it out on Friday, doesn't come back until Monday, half or more of that content is going to be gone. So I'm having to replenish it Monday through Friday again. And that's how I look at our kids. We do amazing jobs in our fields and in our professions by filling that vessel. And then we send them to environments where that is not perpetuated. And so there needs to be a bridging or a gapping. But first it's going to require a certain level of trust.
Wait. Let me summarize what I just heard. I'm not sure I heard it 100% correct. We're going to rewind. But did she basically just say that they do their job in the schools and then they send the kids home and they send them into an environment in which the work they've done in the schools is not perpetuated? Do I have that right? I'm pretty sure that's what I heard. Let's rewind a minute or two because I want to just make sure that that's what I heard.
So it's almost like it's compartmentalized. This is what I learned at school. This is SEL. And then when I get home, those same conversations are not had or the language is not had. And so the awareness of self and the social emotional learning that I'm experiencing there, it's not permeating my house. And so I think that there is a breakdown between where the information is being shared and how it's impacting our homes and our communities. It's almost like a container or a vessel. If I were to bring in a vase and I constantly pour SEL content into it and love and support and all of those great things, and I do that Monday through Friday, but there's a pinhole on the side of it, and I send it out on Friday, doesn't come back until Monday, half or more of that content is going to be gone. So I'm having to replenish it Monday through Friday again. And that's how I look at our kids. We do amazing jobs in our fields and in our professions by filling that vessel. And then we send them to environments where that is not perpetuated. And so there needs to be a bridging or a gapping. But first, it's going to require a certain level of trust. I'm not quite.
Wow. Okay, let's talk again about how every time we say public schools, we mean the government. And what she is saying is we do our job. The government does its job in brainwashing your kids. We give your kids all this information. We do all the social emotional learning. We do it every day. We do the yarn activity where we're throwing the yarn around to teach the kids that they are part of a larger collective. And then we send the kids home and they don't get the same messages. And then it makes our job harder. It makes the government's job harder when parents are not telling the children the same thing that we're telling the children as the government. That's what she just said. All right.
Quite sure of what it looks like where everybody else was, but my mind goes back to when I was a teacher at Zucker. There were great things that I taught my kids, but because of the relationship between the home and the school was frayed, a lot of those lessons didn't carry over to the home. And so they didn't carry over into the community. And so it didn't carry over into the kid thinking about how they could impact their community through civic engagement. And so it's just not one place. It needs to spread. It needs to keep moving. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. And I'm sitting here thinking that we're kind of like at this crossroads, whereas civic engagement is about working towards solving the issues in our community and society. So you have people, I think all of us want to get it right, but we're at this intersection of civic engagement, wanting to get it right, and also social awareness, which is a competency of the SEL, which is, taking the time instead of seeking to be right, we have to seek to understand, taking the different perspectives. All of us come into our classrooms, all of us come into our spaces with different stories, with different strengths. But if we take the time to understand where a person is coming from and how they enter the space, and also taking the time to understand the people that are impacted by the work of the civic engagement, then at that time we will truly have solutions that are inclusive, that are equitable, that are sustainable, and we do it together as a community. But until we
there's
focus
that
on
word again.
that understanding piece, I'm not sure.
You look at the literature, school to prison pipeline. That's Reed, Rich Milner, Tyrone Howard, Monique Morris. These disciplinary actions push kids out of school and then funnel them into the carceral system, where they literally do lose the ability to be civically engaged. Once you're locked up, you don't get to participate in the same type of way. So many groups can demonstrate little to no socio-emotional skills, but from a racial standpoint, they tend to get treated differently. And that, of course, is compounded by gender as well. You look at the literature on Black girls, for example, you'll see that they're criminalized in very harsh ways. So I think that there are some promising connections there, but I'm still trying to work through what that relationship looks like between, more SEL skills will equal more civic engagement, or what? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, the way I've been thinking about it lately is really thinking about.
I'm gonna be honest. I think that guy is like the biggest useful idiot that I've ever seen in my life. I genuinely think he's one of those people that he doesn't understand what he's doing. I just really do. I think he's one of those people that has no effing idea what he's doing. He's like the big dumb jock that looks nice and plays on the football team, and maybe he's like a really good football player, but he's not the brightest crayon in the box. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what he is. I'm sorry. And you know what? I have to have more empathy for that, because it's like, not everyone can be the brightest crayon in the box, man. I'm sorry you got indoctrinated. I am, but I don't think that guy I don't think he's nefarious. And I don't think most of the people doing this are nefarious. I don't. But that doesn't mean they're not causing problems.
I kind of reflect on my own children. What do I want them to take away from learning or having greater social emotional competencies? And I always tell them, and I think my husband and I always tell them, at the end of the day, We want you to like be good people and kind of use like your education and what you're doing and what you're learning in school to help better your community and society in some way, right? So to me, that's how I kind of see the link, because I totally get your point, Adam. I see that too. I think there's arguments around that. But to me, it's really about how do you take some of the social emotional skills and competencies that you could gain and really think about outside of your own individual self and reflecting around the community around you and doing problem solving with other folks in your community to help kind of better and provide better solutions for that community. And so that's the way I've been trying to frame it lately in my own head. And I think it reflects on what Sharon and Shanika were saying around community that really resonated with me as well.
It makes me think about the discussion, the question that we're on makes me think or reflect about a time in my life where I was transitioning from one place to another, and how I was a young mother. I had my son when I was.
Can we just talk for a second about how, like, in every single presentation we watch, almost like every week after week after week, I almost just knocked my wine glass down, pulling the yarn off the ball. In every single conversation we watch week after week, there's always a point in which people just stop and reflect about their journey as human beings and how hard it was, and how they basically talk about their hero's journey, right? They talk about the time like when they went through some struggles in life and they came out better on the other side. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I just I just don't think that professional development webinars are necessarily the correct time to have that reflection about all of the ways in which your life has sucked and all the challenges that you as an individual went through, because this is supposed to be like a professional development webinar. That's what it is. And it's like, I just wish, I don't know, man. I wish that more people, like, again, they're not bad conversations to have. It's just like people are doing it just to get the points, right? That they're not doing it for like any sort of self-reflection or anything like that. They're doing it to get the points. And I say that as someone who, like, oftentimes when I'm doing one of these webinars or I'm having a conversation with someone, I always I just think about things in stories. So for me to understand things, I'll oftentimes equate them back to a story, and so I'm not unconscious of the fact that I do this sometimes, but, like, I feel like these people do it for a fundamentally different reason. No, Naruto, sadly, there was not a land blessing. I'm sorry. I feel like the land blessing has gone out of fashion. The land blessing was real big, like, 2017, 2018. The land blessing has gone out of fashion recently.
In my early 20s. And so I understood that having my son, I was responsible for him and providing for him. And I was so focused on providing for him financially that I unintentionally neglected his social emotional well-being at times. So I had to choose between being there for him and nurturing him or providing for him. And so from a personal standpoint, there was a hierarchy of needs. I understood that I, at a later time, might have the ability to impact my community civically, but I was in a place where I was trying to preserve myself, and I was trying to preserve and support and live for my son. And so I think when we create systems where persons are able to sustain themselves and they don't have to choose, I would have loved to have been in both places, figuratively, so to speak, at the same time. But I had to make a choice and I had to make a decision.
Yes,
so I had to
she's feeling guilty
between
about
being
being an insufficient parent
name, right? Being there for him
on a
and
public
being
webinar.
actively involved in all of these
Yep.
things around me within my community. And so I took up a very selfish standpoint. I had to preserve me and my house first. Now I'm able to immerse myself in more community involvement, and I'm able to learn more. And sometimes I say I'm behind the ball because I was so busy working here, I couldn't focus in those other areas. I don't know about anyone else, but a large part of my community from where I'm from are in the same position. You have to make a decision. How can I help the whole if the part of me is not,
Shaniqua, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. When you look at the SEL competencies, the self-awareness, the self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, all these different things. Although you were financially, you were hyper focused on financially, you know, creating this life
Holy
for
shit.
you and your
Holy shit.
son.
She's about to argue. Okay, here's a prediction. She is about to argue that if only this mom had undergone social emotional learning, she would have been able to better parent her child. We do know who's funding this. Bill Gates. Bill Gates funds Castle. Mark Zuckerberg funds Panorama. Bill Gates funds Castle.
You were pouring all these things, you were modeling all these things, you know, and for your child and even for your community. Because think about it, we're all a 15-second decision away from life being totally different. You could have done some really rough things in order to provide, but you made other decisions instead. You know, you reflected on who you were or who you wanted to be as a mom, your strengths, your limitations, and what you wanted for your child. That's all self-awareness. You know, you were, although, and I know it, as you described, you were dealing with a lot of different emotions, but you were coping and you weren't trying to get rid of your feelings, but you're still here. So you figured out a way to appropriately express those emotions so you can be who you needed to be for your child. And your child is the product that you are sharing with society that's making the world a better place. When I work with different teachers,
they could have edited all this out. They chose not to. They could have edited it out.
Extra, whatever. Once we really start diving into the things that they do and aligning it to each one of the SEL competencies, they were like, well, you know what? I am doing that. Oh, you know, oh my gosh, had no idea that's what it was. And we validate our teachers, we validate ourselves in the work that we're doing so that we can lift each other up and lift ourselves up. And that to me is civic engagement.
I didn't look at it like that. And you know what, at the time, at that place in my life, I felt so isolated. You know, I felt isolated. And I think part of it, Sharon, was the weight of the responsibility. And I think the secret shame of some past decisions. I felt like I wasn't civically involving anyone. But I think I want to say thank you for making me aware that even when I was unintentionally engaging others, that I was. And I think if I were looking at someone else, I may have been able to eloquently say to them what you said to me. I think that sometimes in looking at self, we don't see the impact and the rippling effect that we have with others. So thank you for saying that to me. Thank you for supporting me in that way. I don't know if I saw that until today.
You know, people don't pay, you're welcome. People don't pay attention to what we say. They pay attention to what we do. And you were a living, breathing model every single day. And now you're not as hyper focused. Now your eyes, you're beginning to see that, oh, I am being more engaged, but you were engaged anyway, girl.
You know, I can't help but you know, maybe this is just.
I mean, okay, so like, here's the thing. Catalyst, if you don't know what it's about, you don't need to stay. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think anything that first lady said was wrong or bad. Like she's demonstrating social emotional learning. What just happened is she's demonstrating social emotional learning. That's why they left that in. That's why they didn't cut it out. She's demonstrate you can be kind and empathetic and you're providing the role model your son needs to see and all that. And I don't necessarily think that anything that she said was like wrong or bad. But didn't it come across as completely inauthentic? Now, I don't know these people. I have no idea. But it came across to me as completely inauthentic. And that's the problem. Because I doubt these two women know each other. I doubt they're best friends. So how can, like, yeah, contrived. Love Laugh Live says contrived. Yeah, it's contrived. It's not genuine. And I I don't have any issue with, like, expressing empathy towards someone else or building someone else up or making them feel good or any of those things. I think all those things are fine. But to me, I feel like this teaches people to come from a place of inauthenticity. And don't things like that mean so much more when you know the person actually means it? When you know the person actually cares about you? I don't know.
The nature of my work, but point out the tensions in this work, right? To be able to think about how, in the midst of those conditions, many of us we do the best that we can, but we just in general we fail to talk about the bigger limiting factors on us. Like, why is it that my mom is struggling? Like, she is doing a great job, and she's implementing social emotional strategies, whether she called it that or not. But I think sometimes this causes us to be able to zoom out and go, yes, she's really good at it, but why does that keep happening to her? What is that? What are the bigger outside forces that put people in positions to have to be so good at using their social emotional skills and, like, diversifying the way that they become civically engaged? And so that's one of the tensions for me that I think is a real promising site for the work, is to
I'm
really
hoping they're gonna get to the Q&A soon,
zoom
because
out
there
and
was
take a
supposed to be
macro
a
look at
Q&A.
not just the individual skills that kids can learn, but to the civic engagement point, or maybe it's more of a social political conscious piece. Like, how can the growth of those skills then empower young people and adults, really, to transform the conditions that bring on this collective suffering that some of us experience?
It goes back to your
He's bringing it back to intersectionality. Collective suffering. Jeremy says, "Thank you so much for this information, Carlin. My father is a pastor who's very active in dealing with the heresy of Marxism and its infiltration in the church, and he found the heads up on this topic he's going to have to look into. Extremely welcome, so he can plan for it." Yeah, Jeremy, make sure you send your father the webinar that I did yesterday. No, the stream I did yesterday with Sloan. And thank your father for us for looking into it and making sure he's up to speed on things. I know it's not necessarily the most fun topic to think about. But I really do think I really do think that I'm not a Christian, and I don't say that to be mean to Christians, like, I'm just not one. But I really do think that spirituality and faith is one of the tools that we have to help people not fall into the traps of these people. And I don't necessarily think it needs to be Christianity. I think it could be anything. I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not a Christian, but I'm a very spiritual person. I have a very specific faith and set of beliefs that I believe very strongly in. They don't work for everyone, but it works for me. But I do believe that it is my spiritual beliefs that prevented me from getting sucked into the woke. And I think that, the more that we can help people have faith that they are part of a bigger picture, the less that they need Marxism and the government to take care of them, because they know they're already taken care of. They're just fine. They're fine exactly how they would be. They're fine exactly as they are. They don't need all this crap.
earlier point, Adam, really, when you were saying, when I asked what was the definition of civic engagement, and you brought up, youth have to be really reflective, right? And I think that's what you're getting at now is.
And by the way, I mean, I think that atheists can have a belief system that can prevent them from jumping into this. I think that a lot of people use this. They use ideas like this to help fill the God-shaped hole. But, like, I also think for me, it's about having a larger sense of purpose, seeing yourself from a much more high level vantage point than we necessarily see ourselves from a human perspective. I think it's about having a sense of purpose. I think it's about thinking about the way you want to be of service to the world, which I don't think is the same thing as being part of the collective, because I think you can do that from, like, a very individualized sense. So, things like that. Catalyst, the stream I did yesterday would be a great place to start. Yeah, I understand. Go. Like, I mean, we have about 15 minutes left of this webinar. Of course, I've got some commentary. So then, after I go watch the stream I did yesterday, honestly, because that's the best place to start.
Is that maybe that's the connection, right? It's not that they have to like take these skills, they have to look at what's kind of happening in the society and communities around them and put two and two together, right? And really reflectively think about, well, how am I going to take these skills and figure out, and let me figure out what the problem is, and how am I going to take these skills and apply it to hopefully try to address the problem, is what I'm hearing. I think that's that what you said earlier, that's where the tension is, right? And makes me think just, is it important then for schools and educators to really prioritize connecting social emotional competencies to larger questions of civic responsibility and justice? Like, should we really be making that link and making it more?
She said the magic word. She said the magic word. Do you guys catch that? Because up until this point in the webinar, she's talked about civic responsibility, civic engagement. Did you guys catch what she just said? Chat in if you caught what she just said. And I'm looking on Rockfin and Odyssey too. So if you're watching on Rockfin or Odyssey, like, what did she just say? Civic engagement and what? I'm just waiting for the chat delay. I want to see if anyone caught it before I replay it. Yes, justice. Yes, Dwayne got it. Justice. Yvonne, social justice. Yes, she did. She said the quiet part out loud. Let's listen again.
That's that what you said earlier, that's where the tension is, right? And makes me think just, is it important then for schools and educators to really prioritize connecting social emotional competencies to larger questions of civic responsibility and justice? Like, should we really be making that link and making it more?
Should schools, should the government, should government run schools be going the extra mile of connecting social emotional learning to civic engagement and justice? That is the question. Let's hear the answer.
Explicit and help them with those reflection pieces. Just what do you all think, given that inherent tension that Adam, I think, is really appropriate for you to bring up?
Even if we don't, they're going to discover it on their own. And so we use a term in education called scaffolding, which is really what I think about as an onion. You're peeling back the layers. And so when you teach children and you're teaching yourselves to be more inquisitive and ask more questions, the more that you peel back, the more whys and hows and whens. Okay, and how did that happen? And when this occurred, what was the result of that? And so when we continue to ask those questions, we will get to the root cause of the problem. It's all about asking questions. At some point, we'll get there. I think a few of us have already made that journey, but our kids will.
I agree. And my answer is yes. Making those connections create clarity. And when you do that, it's one of those where, okay, this has happened. We didn't always get it right, but what can I do right now within my sphere of influence in order to work towards getting it right? And those are the conversations that I have with my 18-year-old and my 14-year-old.
Yeah, I think there are some promising connections, and for me, I think if we can figure out how to take the work and deepen it, broaden it to address issues of power and culture as well, I think we would be looking at the next phase of the work, to have a much a bigger impact for kids and caregivers.
Yeah. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I wish we were actually in person, but unfortunately we're, running out of time. So, just to conclude, I really appreciate the discourse, but if there was anything that you'd love to share with folks on, what you're currently working on or what you're really passionate about these days, I'd love to hear what that is.
Gosh, I'm really passionate about adult social emotional competence and wellness. I feel like we cannot give what we don't have. The pandemic is a golden opportunity for us to model the skills that we would like to see within our kiddos because we have all experienced the shared trauma. So, building our adults up so that they can take care of the littles.
Mm.
That's what my work is about.
I'll share. I'm continuing to kind of explore that intersection of race and trauma, and one of the things that I've really come to understand is that to shift the discourse away from this westernized medical, what I've called white dominant colonial logic.
Oh God. You know what's ironic is this guy right here. I mean, this is all the evidence you need that social emotional learning is not critical race theory rebranded, because this guy right here is really the only person to talk about race. The only time they've talked about race in this entire chat is when this guy has brought it up. Of course, like, I mean, I don't know that he's white, but at least he's a man. But it's like, oh my God, dude. He just got in like every GD buzzword he could possibly get in.
It's important for us to bring in multiple ways of knowing. So for me,
multiple ways of
my
knowing.
colleague, Abiola Frende Wu, she's over at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. She's been really helping me better understand this work by bringing in the work of Black feminism. That's not an area that I'm really familiar.
I actually on my screen right now, I almost picked for today's thing. I almost picked a webinar called Conversations in Black Feminist Practice, Black Queer Radicalisms. So maybe we'll do that next week. Maybe we will do the Black Queer Radicalisms Feminist webinar next week. I'll have to bookmark it. I'll have to save it.
With, but as I'm becoming familiar with, I'm telling you, it's really changing my views on trauma, suffering, and healing. So I really push us, I think, and the listeners of this conversation to think outside of that mainstream book. Don't just go and pick up the newest SEL book. Read outside of the genre to try to understand how socio-emotional skills and learning and competency show up in other texts. Let us do the work of analyzing other texts to see how it emerges, I would say. The English teacher smiles.
I like that. He said analyzing the text. I like that he said that. I had this answer together last night and I wanted to sound really smart. Yeah, but I feel comfortable with this group.
So what she just said is I had this answer together last night, which means that every single person on this webinar got every single question in advance and was able to carefully prepare their answers and know exactly what they were saying, and they probably followed the script the entire time. And you wonder why we think it's inauthentic. I don't have a script for anything. I never script out a damn thing I do. I might come up with some talking points in my head, but I never script anything out because I don't want it to come across like this, grossly inauthentic.
And so I'm just going to speak from my heart. And so what I want to leave is that I committed to healing myself.
I want to say too, I actually like this lady for some reason. I think this lady actually has like a good energy about her. I think that she comes from a good place. I think she's trying to do the right thing. I actually like this lady. I do. I don't know what it is about her. I just like she's got like okay energy.
And I realized that when I'm healed and when I'm whole and when I'm safe, I can impact the lives of those around me. I want every person that I'm connected with to be whole and sound.
I really think that she means that. I really do.
I'm committed to helping the people that I'm connected to. And whatever that looks like, I'm open to relationships and connectedness after this call. Just want to do good work, right? With good people, and live a good life.
That resonates with me too. And what you're saying, Sharon, too, I've been thinking a lot
Yeah.
about this and just how
Monica
important
says she
adults
seems
are
sweet and
in
well-intentioned.
supporting
And that's
kids.
and that's part of what is so nefarious about everything. It's like I genuinely think a lot of the people that I really disagree with are nice people and are well-intentioned people, and they've been brainwashed to love, laugh, lives point. Like, it's so nefarious and it's so awful. And it's like these people are just as much a victim as anyone else. They really are. They've been taught this.
In their own, social emotional journey. And I think you're right, Shanika. I think for all of us, myself included, we really have to work on ourselves and make sure that we're socially, emotionally strong so that we can support kids positively. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you for taking this time.
All right, there's
away
going to
from,
be
I
a
know, your very
Q&A, I
busy
think. So
days
we're
to have
going
this
to wait for the
conversation with me. I
Q&A.
really appreciated it.
I don't know if I'd be happy to connect with folks who are, if you're interested in talking outside of here or collaborating, but also to the listeners.
This is
as well,
so
if they're
highly
interested in
produced. It's
reaching out.
ridiculous. I've never seen a
Questions.
webinar highly produced
Just again,
like this.
thank you so much for all your time, and I really appreciate the conversation, and hope that we can continue the discourse outside of here, and hopefully around food sometime.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Yes. Have a great rest of the week.
Same.
Hi, everyone. I am Tia. I was the facilitator on the video. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you appreciated the conversation and the discourse as much as I did when I was facilitating it. So I would, we've gotten some questions, and I'm going to take maybe 7 or 8 minutes or so to answer some of these questions for you.
They're probably all planted.
Let me
Almost
see.
entirely all like planted. But let's see.
So one question that we got in the Q&A, and actually a pre-sent question as well, a couple of them reflected the same theme. So it's, how can we encourage civil discourse among elementary school students while keeping SEL in mind? I think
Why do you need to encourage civil discourse among elementary school students? These children are 10 and ages 4 to 10. Why do you need to encourage civil dialogue and discourse among children ages 4 through 10? Most of these kids can't read. They can't do basic math. They can't write. Wow.
some of this was talked about in the video that you all watched, but again, I think the way I think about it is really thinking about those critical SEL skills that are important to have really good civil discourse and civil engagement. So really thinking about perspective taking, thinking critically about what might be.
Dude. You are not going to teach a 5-year-old to be able to take another person's perspective. That is much more advanced than what a 5-year-old is capable of processing. These people are idiots. I am sorry. Jeremy says, I certainly will send him those resources. This is an active war. Those engaged in organized religion are dealing with it now. Every little bit helps. Oh, yeah, dude. It's in the churches. Oh, my God. Is it in the churches? Yes. 5-year-old being need taught to take someone else's perspective. God damn it. That's how they train them to say, you need to be a good neighbor, and you need to be a good friend, and you need to take care of other people, and you don't want grandma to die, do you? That's why you need to get vaccinated, because the CDC says you need to get vaccinated because it means being a good neighbor. And of course, we listen to the CDC for all vaccinated relation information, and the vaccine is totally safe, and everyone should get it because the CDC is our God.
Impacting your own community and people around you, and trying to learn from others and trying to collectively solve those.
Do any of you have elementary school age children? I'm serious. Do any of you have elementary school age children? Are they going to be very good at understanding someone else's perspective, given that they are children, many of whom can't read? Let me know your experiences in the chat.
Community problems together. And I think those kinds of skills and discussions can happen even at a young age, because I think all kids are cognizant of kind of what's going on around them. So that's what I would say on that. And then let me see another question.
Yeah. My kid doesn't understand his own perspective, much less the perspective of other people. My God, these are supposed to be professionals. Patrice, they don't even understand their own perspective. Exactly. Oh.
So here's a good question. It says, I like the conversation about words, actions, and behaviors on the community. The world in which we are living tends to be Eurocentric or individualistic and not from a collectivist frame. How can we promote the notion of community in the world of social media?
Wait.
Emphasizes...
Wait. I want to listen to this question again. I had to adjust something on my screen. You guys might have seen it flicker. Hang on. They're talking about how people view the world as individualists, and listen to this question. They just ask, like, people are viewing themselves as individuals. How do we get them to view themselves as part of the collective?
So here's a good question. It says, I like the conversation about words, actions, and behaviors on the community. The world in which we are living tends to be Eurocentric or individualistic and not from a collectivist frame. How can we promote the notion of community in the world of social media, which emphasizes a me culture? And that's a really big question. We have to think about that duplicity. And I think that is a really important thing to think about. I know in the development of our programs, we really try to take both of those lenses and think about not only how does SEL help an individual, but how does it help individuals to form a collective and really think about problems from a community or group standpoint.
In their program, they teach people how to be part of a collective and to focus on problems from a collective standpoint. Shocking.
And really impact those for good. Another thing I think that SEL could do to promote this idea is really thinking about providing opportunities for all children to see themselves either in a program or a conversation. And then also being able to see other different points of views and lived experiences and to learn from that so that everyone can share in that collective learning. Let me see. There was another question that actually came in earlier, thinking about how do we have these conversations with parents who may think that being civically engaged has something to do or is correlated with politics. And again, I think it goes back to
how do we rein in those conservative parents who are just afraid that we're indoctrinating their kids into a Marxist ideology? How do we convince them that this isn't about politics? This is about culture. This is about community. This is about being a good neighbor. Don't you want other people around your children to be good neighbors?
Understand that every community has its own unique issues and problems. And again, it's getting kids and youth to think about that and what's impacting the communities that they live in, and to think critically about that and try to figure out solutions to that. So I think that helps all kids. Let me see. This is such a great topic. I wish I could talk to all of you actually, instead of just answering your questions. It'd be great conversation. And let me see. I really like this comment, although it's not really a question, from one of our guests. I think of civic engagement and SEL connection as mutually beneficial. Civic engagement requires knowledge about power, how it shifts through institutions and laws, and skills to choose the best strategy for change based on understanding the context, relationships, and systems at play. And emotional engagement, whether you call it passion or spark, is a critical piece of the civic engagement and integration with SEL. I think that is a great comment and actually highlights a lot of how SEL skills and competencies really does play a big part, and like this person said, is mutually beneficial to being civically engaged.
All right, let's see. Jeremy, one more super chat. The scariest part is all of the ideas here that in other contexts are completely moral, but combined like this are nightmarish. Just yeah, this is the problem. Jeremy, you just hit the nail on the head, because it's like, I don't think it's a bad idea to think about other people. I don't think it's a bad idea to think about how you're interacting with other people, or how your words might impact other people and their inclination to work with you or have a relationship with you, or any of those things. None of those things are fundamentally bad. In fact, those things are very smart. I mean, I did a whole presentation about office politics, and actually you guys can still find it's like one of the first videos I ever put on my channel. It's a presentation called Playing Politics, the Psychology of the Human Workplace. And it's what this is about, understanding that different people have different needs, and you have to understand what those needs are when you're communicating with them, because if you understand what those needs are, you're more likely to get what you want. And so I don't think these things are bad ideas. And by the way, you're also more likely to make other people feel good and feel valued. And I don't think that those are bad ideas either, but it's just like, they're not doing it for the right reasons. With great power comes great responsibility. You can use these things for good, or you can use them for evil. These people are not using them for good. And the most dangerous thing about it is many of them think they're using it for good. They don't know.
Let's see.
Yeah, we like Jeremy. Jeremy's a good addition to our group. Welcome, Jeremy.
I'll probably take one more question. It looks like there was a question around measuring SEL impact. I think it's important to do so. I think there are a lot of really good research-based measures and assessments out there that measure SEL competencies. I think the thing to think about, though, and related to this topic, is what are really ultimately the outcomes that we're trying to improve? And things around student belonging and feeling included and being engaged, I think are important outcomes that we would hope that SEL competencies improve, and thinking about civic engagement as well as an outcome, and whether or not we're moving the needle on that is important as well. So I think we are at time, and I'm going to hand it back over to Castle, but thank you all so much.
Yes,
for
let's listen to what
listening and
Castle has to
participating.
say, because
We really appreciate
if you just joined, or maybe joined partway through, Castle is a group that I talked about with Sloan in yesterday's stream about social emotional learning, and I highly recommend that anyone who found this terrifying, go watch the stream I did yesterday. It is on my channel, about social emotional learning with Sloan Rasmussen, and it's far scarier than we've even articulated in this stream. But Castle is one of the people that we talked about, or one of the organizations that we talked about. So let's listen to what Castle has to say to wrap this up. And please remember, if you enjoyed this stream, please make sure you mount that like button. I hope you'll consider subscribing on whatever platform you're watching on, whether that be YouTube or Rockfin or Odyssey or Facebook or any of the others. Oh, play.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. We really appreciate your being here today and for your facilitating the pre-recorded conversation. Please share with the panelists that their comments and their insights, they were just so rich and wonderful. So we really appreciate Committee for Children bringing together that discussion and sharing with us today. And we also want to thank Committee for Children again for their sponsorship of the SEL Exchange, which is coming up on October 14th. Registration for the virtual summit is open, and there is a link there on your screen and in chat, and we'll also include it in the email that you'll get tomorrow so that you can go ahead and register for the exchange. We'd love to have everyone participate in that 4 hours of learning as well. And just a reminder, you'll be receiving an email tomorrow, again, with a link to register for the SEL exchange, as well as with a link to the recording so you can watch any part of that conversation again. Or
so basically, this is a sales pitch. We don't really need to hear from them. All right, guys, I guess that's all we have. I hope you understand why I am so terrified of social emotional learning. I just really think that this is like the Trojan horse, man. It's the Trojan horse. Again, Melissa made a wonderful analogy earlier in the chat. She said, you know, this is social emotional learning is rewiring the hardware of your children's brain. And then they're able to load whatever software they want, whether that be critical race theory or Marxism or something even crazier than that. It's not exclusive to critical race theory. Social emotional learning is the delivery mechanism for every bad idea that the progressive left have ever had. It's bad. It is not good. And laws aren't going to save us on this one. You want to know why? Because it's already in all the schools. If your kid's school took CARES Act funding, which the vast majority of them did, there was a provision in the bill that put it in the schools. So chances are, if you have children in public schools, it is already in your, it is already there. It's already there. It's already done. So I'm going to have a webinar next week with Justice Graves. He's going to tell us, he's been doing a lot of research into this area. He's going to tell us what he's found. So if you enjoyed that, please make sure you tune in next week for Justice. I believe, let me check real quick. I believe it's on Wednesday. At 5 p.m. Justice will be on the channel to tell us more about what he's learned. So please make sure you're subscribing on the way out the door. And if you haven't already, please consider joining my locals community. You can join for free at kb.locals.com. But if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can go to kb.locals.com/support. And you can join as a member for $5 a month, for $50 a year, or you can make a one-time gift. And remember, we're going to be having a Craftin' Bitch tomorrow at 3 p.m. in my locals, which I will be posting in my locals right after this. I'm going to have my knitting. This is what I'm working on right now. This is my West Knits Mystery Knit Along. I think it's coming out pretty great. Do you guys like it so far? I think it's coming out. Here, I'll even do this. I'll do this so you can see. Oh, I think it's coming out pretty good so far. So 3 p.m. tomorrow in locals. If you join up as a member, you get access to the Craftin' Bitch. We'll see you guys then. Have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you next week.